My name is Emily Beckerman. I like Progress Texas because there is a fact-based, unbiased aggregation of information that people need to know. You know, the Revolution page was what brought me to Progress Texas, and I loved that this was just a very neutral resource, mostly just for people who need help.
It's Monday, May 11, 2026, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch. Rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Progress Texas amplifies progressive values, leaders, and actions. Through our no paywall podcasts and digital media, we make Texas politics easy to understand and to participate in, and your support for fact-based independent media hands the mic to millions of Texans. Huge thanks to Stacy Lawson, Sheridan Lee, and David Virgil for their ongoing sustaining support. This Monday morning comes out of a weekend that got off to a rough start for progressives and Democrats with the news out of Virginia that state's Supreme Court and a truly savage curtailing of democracy undercut the will of over 1.6 million voters in that state in a 4-3 vote on ideological lines and declared the state legislature had violated constitutional procedures by placing an amendment allowing the partisan redistricting of Virginia's congressional map on the ballot too late in the process. So it's back to the old map. It's bad news for sure, but Jaron Gans at The Hill says it hasn't stalled the momentum for a Democratic House majority to emerge from this November's election. The Democrats still maintain a comfortable 5-point lead in the national generic ballot. Those extra seats would have been nice to have, sure, but the bad management of Republicans from Trump on down is the real factor here, as the electorate appears more and more determined to vote for a change in leadership, even as Republican-led legislatures in states like Alabama and Louisiana scramble to protect their incumbents through aggressive redistricting. Their zealous rush to undermine their own voters of color, proving U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts' notion that racism is no longer an issue in the American South as ridiculous as we knew it was. Here's the key math. Democrats need to win the popular vote by roughly 4 points if southern states continue their current redistricting efforts, and current polling suggests that 4 points is reasonably within reach. With the majority of toss-up seats currently held by Republicans and Trump's approval numbers continuing to tank alongside historical trends favoring any current president's opposition in a midterm election, Gans believes the GOP is in a tight spot, no matter how the maps end up drawn. The total number of seat gains may be slightly lower without the new lines Virginia's voters asked for, but the path to victory for Democrats in the U.S. House remains wide open. Zeroing in on Texas's largest city for a look at exactly how eager folks are to vote their way out of this mess. And a couple of stories here. First, Jeff Rauner at the Houston Press writes on a new University of Houston survey showing one of Trump's major weak spots is weak even among those who ostensibly support him, and that's the Iran war. Enormously unpopular and made painfully tangible for just about all of us via these California-style gas prices, even as a thin majority of Republicans initially backed military action in Iran. U of H finds that support collapses to just 39% when the prospect of a ground invasion is introduced. Over 85% of respondents spanning all political affiliations anticipate that the Iran conflict will worsen the federal deficit, damage the national economy, and continue to drive up energy prices. This from an electorate already struggling with high living costs. The survey's respondents see Trump's folly in Iran as a threat to both global stability and, perhaps more importantly, at the ballot box this fall, their own personal financial security. And then there's ICE. Covering that same U of H study, Kyle McClanagan at Houston Public Media says it reveals a profound crisis of confidence in federal immigration enforcement across the greater Houston area, with nearly 70% of local residents saying they disapprove of how ICE is handling its mission. This disapproval particularly acute in the city of Houston itself and Fort Bend County, where dissatisfaction levels soared to about 80%. Perhaps most striking, the finding that nearly a quarter of all respondents have themselves had a personal or secondary encounter with ICE in their own neighborhoods, portraying the degree of federal aggression Houston has endured. All this while Governor Abbott was able to stop Houston's local government from limiting that aggression by threatening to claw back state funding for Houston's first responders. Abbott kept federal ICE harassment in Houston unfettered by threatening to defund Houston's police, which probably pleased the dear leader but has deepened resentment of Republican control in H-Town. Majorities in both Harris and Fort Bend counties say they oppose local police and sheriffs cooperating with ICE. ICE. They want community safety models that don't rely on federal intimidation to return to Houston's neighborhoods. The survey finds a slim majority of the entire Houston region now in support of eliminating ICE altogether. It's notable also that while Black and Hispanic Houstonians show the highest levels of ICE disapproval, a majority of white residents and nearly a third of Republicans also expressed dissatisfaction. It turns out roving squads of masked federal goons was a bad idea. Let's see if turnout and results this November line up with this survey from the University of Houston. Scooting over to organized religion and its ever more uncomfortable overlap with state policy lately, especially in our schools. Lacey Beasley at CBS News says that new Bluebonnet learning curriculum incorporated by hundreds of Texas school districts is not only laden with Bible stories, beyond that, it's academically unsound. And it's going to cost you extra. The rollout of Bluebonnet curriculum has hit a massive and expensive roadblock as members of the State Board of Education report that roughly 4,200 corrections will be necessary before this stuff gets dumped on the kids. The Texas Education Agency is attempting to downplay all of this as a matter of updates, but the sheer volume of errors, ranging from incorrect math and flawed answer keys to missing licensing rights for over 1,000 images, has left the veteran publishing experts on the SBOE stunned by Bluebonnet's sloppy execution. Turns out the state of Texas is a poor substitute for an actual professional publishing firm, so now Texas taxpayers, i.e. you and me, get to absorb the cost of reprinting thousands and thousands of physical Bluebonnet books for the upcoming fall semester. Low-quality, error-ridden materials were approved by the Texas State Board of Education. In their zeal to push the Christian Bible on Texas kids, the board failed to get the basic facts right. And that zeal continues unabated, to be sure. Peter Smith at the Associated Press says Trump's new Religious Liberty Commission, the federal advisory panel we've talked about, chaired by Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, is getting ready to recommend a radical shift in the traditional understanding of the First Amendment, with Patrick explicitly declaring the separation of church and state a lie. The RLC has spent the last year drafting a wish list that, if converted to policy, would dismantle established constitutional boundaries concerning religious freedom, including the freedom from religion. We should see this final wish list soon, but the broader picture here is bridging that gap to policy is ultimately the Religious Liberty Commission's agenda. Yet another reason to vote, and vote some more. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is most definitely on your November ballot. See an updated visit with Progress Texas endorsee and State Rep Vicki Goodwin we enjoyed a couple of weeks back. Link is in the show notes. As we wind down this Monday, I do think it's important to maintain that here at Progress Texas, we don't condemn religion itself. And in fact, there's solid wisdom coming from circles of faith in Fort Worth. Emma Ruby at the Dallas Observer says that as the state is poised to carry out a second execution within the span of 2 weeks on Thursday, Edward Busby Jr. faces the death penalty despite significant evidence of his intellectual disability. His case has become a focal point for North Texas faith leaders who are speaking out against Tarrant County's aggressive and racially disproportionate pursuit of capital punishment. A new report released by the Texas Defender Service reveals that Tarrant County is a massive outlier when it comes to capital punishment, accounting for 42% of the state's death penalty trials in the last 2 years, despite representing only 7% of the population. A coalition of 14 Fort Worth faith leaders is responding to what they see as a systemic reliance on the death penalty in the Fort Worth area, directing sharp moral rebuke in a letter delivered to the Tarrant County DA's office, in which they condemn the cruel and unnecessarily vindictive nature of the punishment and the insidious practice of upcharging minority defendants to coerce guilty pleas. The Reverend Ryan Price of Broadway Baptist Church is among this group. He argues that even as attempts are made to cram Christian dogma into state policy, the state's actions regarding the death penalty are fundamentally incompatible with Christian values. As Tarrant County continues to send an overwhelming number of black men to death row, we commend these faith leaders for demanding an end to a system that prioritizes vengeance over human dignity. The statewide primary runoff elections are scheduled for May 26th. Early voting starts on May 18th, 1 week from today. See our carefully crafted GoVoteTexas.org for everything you need to know about voting in Texas. And there's a nice online tool from the Texas Tribune that shows you exactly who will be on your runoff ballot based on your address and party. Both of those are linked in our show notes. We have not one but two live events on the calendar right now in both Dallas and the Houston area. First, Progress Texas will be hosting a live podcast in Cypress in less than 2 weeks. Come join us in North Northwest Harris County as we do a first 6 months check-in with the Cy-Fair ISD school board members who made national news last year when they beat back the Christian Nationalists. Be sure to sign up on the Progress Texas event page and join us on Wednesday evening, May the 20th in Cypress. And this event is free thanks to our sponsors, Sean Finney, the Honorable Leslie Briones, and Otis Evagaro. And we're getting ready for our 16th anniversary celebration in Dallas with drinks, light bites, and a fun review of the highlights of our successes over the last few years. Save that date. It's Tuesday, June 16th, and see the link in the show notes to reserve your spot. Our good friends Howard Cleon, Charles Zeller, Alex Andrade, the Honorable Dick Levine, the Honorable Bill Peterson, and Mark Yagjian are among the supporters of our 16th anniversary shindig. We appreciate all of you very, very much. Our live events are a major way we keep doing what we do, and by sponsoring and attending, you're helping Progress Texas continue our important work during this crucial election year. Learn how to support and join us live at progresstexas.org. While you're at the website, grab the merch to match your values at our web store. Live and ready for you to grab our newly released Humans Against Abbott, Y'all Means All, and Resist shirts, stickers, and buttons. Hit the web store at progresstexas.org to support your favorite podcast network today. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Monday, May 11th, 2026. Links to all of these original stories can be found in our show notes. When lives in Texas are well funded by the far right, your support for fact-based reporting is needed and appreciated. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great day and a great week. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.